What's up, guys? This is Carter Thomas with Coin Mastery TV. How you doing? Tuesday. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button and subscribe if you're new. Joining us, we've got some great stuff today. Man, we have a lot of news, a lot of exciting stuff happening. Looks like the balance that we were talking about yesterday is playing out nicely, and things are looking good today. Or at least looking more positive than they have. So for everyone out there who's been waiting for some bull action, here you go. You got it. We're doing party time. Today we're talking about a lot with some bigger things happening in the macro crypto world. We're going to look a little bit at price, but I think it's pretty simple as far as what I'm doing, which is all I can really ask for. We'll look at these moving averages or exponential moving averages. And then we're going to talk about some things happening in crypto space that will help you guys decide where you think we are in the cycle, the future prospects of where we're at, hopefully answer a few questions, especially about some of the hot topics yesterday, specifically OTC trading, OTC Bitcoin, and clarify a few things around what that means and go from there. Okay. So what we're going to do, we're just popping open Bitcoin's chart. And this is what I had up yesterday. Changed the EMA 20 to blue just to make it a little easier to see. But I'm zooming in here, and we're on the daily Bitcoin chart on Bitfinex. And that seems to be the best. Now, one thing that's not here, which I'll show right now, is the volume, which you can see kind of spiked on this big slowdown candle. We had a few hammers and now we're coming back, but the volume is descending. That is not unnatural. Like when you're doing some sort of reversal pattern, how big this reversal is yet to be determined, seeing as this volume is not nearly as big as it was in February, but it is important to point that out. I think there's one thing that we didn't point out. I'm going to hide that for simplicity's sake. And what you can see yesterday, I drew in this box as a point of reference, and I'm actually going to extend this box a little bit up and down, which I know is not an exact target. But as these daily candles move up, so let's call it on the 5th, maybe, the 5th, maybe even the 6th. So that's a couple days from now. We will see the daily candles, assuming it continues bullish, will intersect with this 20 EMA, right? The blue line right here. This to me is a very, very big deal. Whether or not these daily candles close on top of it, and even better, if they go above it, they're going to come back and test it as support. Do they stay above it? Because when you zoom out, it's really important to get above that line and to stay above that line if you want to really have a sustained bull run. So my personal prediction, which, who knows if it's going to be right or not, is that it comes up, it's going to hit this. It may even exceed this for a day, maybe less than a day. But then eventually it's going to get pushed back down, not unlike what's happened previously, like over here in January, happened earlier this month, and then actually, last week where it goes up and it touches the EMA. But because we are seeing a bigger reversal than normal and the volume is bigger, there's more just kind of sentiment behind it. It may push this up a little bit because the severity of the previous drop is not as big. So that's what this box represents, is a potential sell zone if you're going to short it, or a just really a place to watch. And if it goes through it, what that means to me is that it's kind of one more tally in the right column that would get me bullish for going in for a long-term position. You always want to kind of scale in. You always want to scale out. It's never all in, all out. And so this is just kind of the area of interest. Now, the same thing is true over here on Litecoin. And I think, obviously, on this channel, on other channels, you've seen it before where there's plenty of different ways you can look at this, right? You do retracements on Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, on anything. A lot of these levels are right on line with the 78 level on the retracement. So a lot of things are lining up. I think that the 20 EMA is going to be the line in question, especially the way these candles broke down for Litecoin, Ethereum, and a little bit for Bitcoin. So you keep an eye probably again on the 6th, maybe on the 7th for Litecoin, because it seems to be flattening out a little bit more. Depends on what sort of bullish action we get. And we'll see what happens. I would say it's in the 140 level. That's really where I'm going to be watching to see if it breaks down or if it continues forward and how it intersects with that line on the daily chart. Okay? So that's what we're looking at. A lot of people have been looking at the RSI, right? It was overbought in the daily. And anytime that's happened, we've had a pretty good bull run. But there's, I think a lot of this, in my opinion, is going to come down to big macro stuff, which is why we are going to talk about what's going on overall in the greater market. Because technically speaking, if I was just looking at these charts and everything was great, the world was happy, everyone was kumbaya, loving life, making money, I would say this is a pretty good sign. Right? We're holding these trend lines, non-log trend lines, and things are good. However, we don't live in an ecosystem, even though it feels like we sometimes do. We do have these macros. So we're talking about some good things, some bad things, or bad things, good things, whatever you want to call it. It's just news that has different spins on how it may affect the market. Now, the first one I think this is super interesting, is that there's a trading platform, I believe it's Japanese, called Monex. They offer to buy CoinCheck, which is a big Japanese crypto exchange, for billions of yen. If you remember, CoinCheck was the one who got hacked for NEM, which ironically Poloniex today tweeted about how the NEM is open for withdrawals again, right? Like, you just never know how this is all connected. I mean, it is. There's definitely a whole world of kind of backdoor deals, and that's how it all gets done. But this is, a very interesting play, right? We saw with Circle buying Poloniex. Now remember, Circle is backed by Digital Currency Group. Goldman Sachs is I think they're in the C or D round. I mean, they are kind of involved in Circle. Everyone likes to say that as Goldman Sachs owned. It's actually, they have a very small stake in it relative to someone like Digital Currency Group. But Monex is a publicly traded company. And if you go and you look, and this is on the OTC markets, ironically, there's OTC for stocks as well, for equities. It's not just crypto, by the way. It's huge. I mean, OTC markets are massive. So you can always see like ADP and OTC stocks trading. You can just look up Monex on the Japanese exchange or whatever. Look at this daily chart over here. If you're listening on the podcast, I'm looking just on Bloomberg's daily stock ticker. And when this news came out, I mean, this thing went from 350, and it's trading up around 415, 420 in one day, just based on this news. Right? The CEO of Binance tweeted about this too, which obviously helps with the getting the word out. But that is a big deal. Like, this, I think, is going to be the new add blockchain to your company title and watch your stock explode. And so this is very, very interesting to me. Why is it interesting to me? More importantly, why should you care? Remember this tweet that I put out? This is I actually pinned this in my Twitter profile. I think this is a really important thing. This is how I believe it's going to unfold over the year, or maybe whatever, month, year, 2 years, I don't know. What about institutional money with Bitcoin? The first step, buy as much possible Bitcoin OTC, over the counter, which has a small impact on price. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The second step is buy framework businesses to facilitate market architecture, e.g. Circle with Polo, like buying Poloniex. Guess what's happening? This is step 2. All this OTC volume, which has been happening for the last few months, weeks, big time. Now we're starting to see these deals happen. You're going to see more and more of these deals unfold. This is how institutional money gets into the space. Okay, it's not the, I think that there's like this grand vision of like the traders at Morgan Stanley sitting in a conference room being like, guys, they beat us. Bitcoin won. The crypto, like, we're screwed. Go get a GDAX account. Let's just buy it and hope we don't get screwed because we're going out of business. Like, I think that on some level, that's what people like. That's the idea. And that's not how it's going to happen, right? They're going to get it all behind the scenes, and then they're going to buy the exchanges. Then down the road, they put together products. They legitimize all the currencies. They make sure everything is legit on those exchanges. They go out and market it to people like you and me who go and buy it on the exchanges. That's how price goes up, because that's where the real supply and demand is. And, you know, it may feel like that's a little bit of like they're taking advantage of us, but they're not really. It's just like everything else. Like that's how ETFs work. That's how any investment product works. You market it. It's people buy it. The price goes up. The demand supply. So this is a really interesting thing. I think the more that we see this, I think we're going to see 3 or 4 more of these in the coming months with all the exchanges out there. I mean, you can go on CoinMarketCap and you'll see you can get a list of every single exchange out there and just go down the list. And I bet you half of those are going to get acquired, or at least get deals trying to acquire them by publicly traded companies, aka institutional money, aka holding companies. And that is really how the price is going to get driven. Now, while this is all happening, remember, this is all connected. The whole world, everything, it's like this mesh. It's all connected, right? These companies are not going to, especially publicly traded companies, are not going to acquire an exchange, a crypto exchange for hundreds of millions of dollars without clear regulatory sign-off. And even though we may not, as the public, not have it, the G20, the SEC, the many different securities boards across the world are talking to these bigger companies, and they are saying, hey, here's where we're coming from. And then we, as the general public, we see the kind of the headline stuff. So yesterday, Centra, which is an ICO that I believe they had like a credit card, right? Remember, I think it was like 10X, Centra, Pay. What was the other one? Tickers, PAY. Anyway, they're credit cards, or you can you can use your crypto, kind of like BitPay's kind of like that. And Centra, it was very much, pretty much as close to a scam as it gets, right? Like they said, they have these partnerships with Visa and MasterCard. They didn't have any partnerships at all. They didn't have any infrastructure. They raised a ton of money. They paid a bunch of celebrities, Floyd Mayweather, to promote it. And they got arrested yesterday by the SEC. Like that's a big deal. You can, and it was funny, right? Like I tweeted about this, and I would say a vast majority of people understood that I was being very facetious about it. But then you also have people that were like, hey, that happened with BitConnect. People still bought it up. 1, because they were joking, but 2, because they're like, hey, it's actually not a bad trade. And, whatever. Do what you want. I mean, when money's money. And if there's money to be made and you can make it, you should go do it. But it is a very fascinating indictment on the industry as a whole, if that still is what people are looking to for opportunities, right? Like when you zoom out, you remember, like I would say the past year is one set of making money. Like that's one way that things are going to make money. And then the coming 2 to 3 years is going to be the biggest thing that happens probably in any of our lives when it comes to seeing a new market being born. And yet this, like Centra diving, for anyone listening, I'm looking at Binance right now and just looking at the chart, the 1 hour chart on Centra's price, and just absolutely tanked, but people are buying it. Like it's finding a floor price. Now there may be a lot of bots or whatever. But the bigger piece is that the SEC is starting to come down. This is not going to be the last one. And if they're coming down and they're arresting people, and they are clearly defining what they are okay with and what they are not okay with, that means that somewhere they've already made that decision, which companies like Monex, however you pronounce it, Digital Currency Group, potentially Goldman Sachs, holding companies, institutional money, they've already gotten that. Their lawyers are already, they already know the SEC. They already got that go ahead. So on their side, they're buying stuff OTC. What we see on the news is that the SEC is coming down, and you're going to see both of these begin to unfold. You're going to see the frameworks being built out by the institutional money, and you're going to see the SEC clamping down and clarifying on top of it. So what does that mean for you? First of all, it means you're going to see a lot of these coins take a big dive. One thing I've said before, and I would say it again, liquidity is the most valuable asset in crypto right now, and it will be for the next 6 months. If you hold coins that have liquidity threats, that could be getting delisted from exchanges. It can be the SEC coming in and taking them down, whatever it may be. But if your coin is on the fringe of that, that is something you need to take in mind as a risk factor just as much as any other risk factor. And the way you do that, honestly, is just rank it on market cap. The higher the market cap, the safer it is from a liquidity standpoint and probably from a regulatory standpoint, to be perfectly honest. So keep that in mind. This is, in my opinion, a cautionary tale that it can happen like that. And if you're not looking at your portfolio and realizing that that's a serious threat, you could wake up and be like, oh crap. Similarly, when you see these things dump, there will always be an audience of people that tries to go after this and then gets a pump and dump group and pumps it or whatever, especially on non-US exchanges, which is another kind of nuance to all this. I would encourage anybody to rethink that strategy. And that brings me to the daily reminder that none of this is professional advice whatsoever. Don't listen to anything I say. This is pure entertainment. Hope you're having a great day. Okay? So you see how this is all coming together? So Bitcoin, the chart, is starting to show some signs of life. You're seeing this obviously on Twitter. Meanwhile, you're seeing big institutional companies buying up framework-based companies. They're not necessarily going into exchanges and buying it. They're building the market. The third piece, the SEC is tightening the grip. They're making the clarity more focused. And you also notice that a lot of the things that the SEC comes down on, Bittrex is a US-based exchange, it's like the biggest US-based altcoin exchange. Same with Poloniex, but whatever. They probably won't have any SEC coins that come down hard on Bittrex. So if you want to have like some sort of hedge, get coins that are only traded on Bittrex. That removes, I shouldn't say it could potentially remove the SEC risk more so than if you trade on Binance and KuCoin. Because think about that. Right now, Centra is trading on Binance after the SEC came out and said we're arresting the founders because this is a scam, and Binance is still trading it. KuCoin took it off immediately. They're like, this is gone. So at least they're trying to be compliant. Binance came out and said, we're going to give it 72 hours or 6 days, and we're going to see what the deal is. That's risky. I know I have a conspiracy theory that, at some point, the U.S. could say, look, these are legit securities. You can't trade on exchanges that are trading illegitimate securities. Not sure I agree with that move on Binance. So this is all kind of getting tied together, right? The whole thing is unfolding. It doesn't necessarily mean that the price is about to skyrocket. Hopefully it does, but it just means that there's movement happening. There's something. It's all coming together now, and in my opinion, it's being driven by the regulatory clarity. Now let's talk a little bit about what this OTC. So if you don't know what OTC is over the counter. That's an acronym for that. And yesterday, Jeremy Gardner tweeted, hey, OTC market demand for Bitcoin right now is unlike anything I've ever witnessed. Several asks for multi-billion-dollar blocks. So what that means is that a company, let's say there's a like a family office or a pension or a brokerage or private equity company mostly in New York or LA or San Francisco or Hong Kong or London or wherever, and they want to get into Bitcoin. They don't want to go, and like they have billions and billions and billions of dollars. They're not going to buy $1 million worth of Bitcoin. They need to buy a lot of Bitcoin. And so one thing, I'm going to shut this down real quick. They can't just go on to Gemini or GDAX or any of these exchanges and go buy $50 million worth of Bitcoin. Like the slippage, which means that it would move the price up, would be insane, and it would take months probably to do that. So they go on these OTC markets, which is kind of like a direct deal with somebody else, and say, look, we've got $50 million. Who do you know that has however many Bitcoin that would be, like what, 50,000 or 5,000 Bitcoin, right? Speaking of which, if you do have a huge amount of Bitcoin and you want to be connected to a buyer, you should send me an email, right? support@coinmastery.com, because I got plenty of buyers for plenty of Bitcoin. So if you do have a ton of Bitcoin that you want to sell, let me know. I can hook these deals up for you. But what this means is that whole market is happening while kind of all we see is GDAX, Gemini, Binance. Like that's the world we see. So there's almost two markets happening. In the OTC market, the volume is insane. It's like 70% of the total volume of what's happening. But what that also means is that the price does not change nearly as much, because when you do a direct deal, it's kind of like it's at one price. So it's almost like one trade. And there's a discount involved. There's brokerage fees involved. Typically between 3 and 10% is like the net discount that's included with the brokerage fees. So if you do 50 million, 5 million of that goes into the price. You get a 5 million, 10% discount plus a 1.5% brokerage fee, whatever it may be. This is true. In fact, it's bigger than you'd think. There's probably demand. If the market cap for what's the market cap right now for market cap? Market cap right now for Bitcoin, 126 billion. There is definitely 126 billion dollars worth of OTC demand out there. I can promise you that. And so it's all there, but but what happens is they try to buy it all at the lowest possible price. So if they do a deal, right? Let's say they did a deal this morning and they wired in 50 million into escrow and they agreed to buy 5,000. I don't know how many that would be right now. The price would be 7,400, 10% discount. So let's call that 6,700-ish area. If this price skyrockets 5% in the next 24 hours, that entire deal falls apart, right? Because it's very volatile. So you see a lot of this OTC stuff happening because the price is low enough where the volatility, they're willing to eat that volatility. That is why it's heating up on top of the regulatory stuff. See what I'm saying? So yes, the OTC market is heating up right now, but what it's doing is not necessarily so that they can pump the price. It's so that they are in a position to acquire companies like Poloniex, like CoinEx, and like all these exchanges, and actually create an environment where they can legally go out and get Bitcoin into the hands of everybody else and market it like a real security, because they can't pump the prices from security laws. So they can't directly do anything with the Bitcoin. They just own it, and then they can market it so that the price goes way up. This is a really, 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 really big deal. And I think that a lot of people confuse OTC demand with the price of Bitcoin going up, because what happens is the OTC demand may be really hot right here, right now, but if it jumps really fast, the OTC demand could go away very quickly. Similarly, if it dumps down, the OTC demand could drop very quickly. A lot of these deals can fall through. So what I would say is that OTC market demand is a very good proxy for getting into the crypto space. Like the framework, I'm not sure it directly correlates to the price yet, because we need to have this whole thing built out, the whole world built out, before anyone is going to go out and pump that price or try to get 25, 50, 100 million people to go buy Bitcoin or crypto, because this whole thing just isn't done yet. And the demand is so high, and the sell side is very difficult. So it's important to understand that these two markets are just, it's there's no good analogy. Gold isn't a very good analogy. It's really more about just being in the right position. So setting up your chessboard as a hedge for the future, or as a potential leverage point for the future if you're going to make acquisitions. But it doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to impact price at all. It's just kind of like I don't want to miss the party type of situation. Okay, so I hope that helps clear it up. Again, look, if you've got a ton of Bitcoin you want to sell at OTC, send me an email. Please don't individual serious inquiries only type of situation, but I've got plenty of buyers buy a whole lot of Bitcoin from pretty much anyone. Now, this also gets into this idea of there's some headlines about these crypto hedge funds that are starting to show signs of weakness. Now, I think that this may play into the OTC markets, right? Because potentially there's, a lot of hedge funds, what happens is that they get one or two like smoking deals. So if you look back at Bitcoin, many of these hedge funds started maybe like Q2, Q3 of 2017. Loosely speaking, that's from like SEC filings. There's a massive backlog of that. And you saw the first real crypto hedge funds come through July, August. And a lot of it happened because people went big on a couple pre-sale ICOs, some of the big ones like, Salt or Stratus was kind of too early for that. Metal was one, but some of the ones that like just timed it absolutely perfectly. And it was new enough that they could create a hedge fund, and they slapped the name hedge fund on it, not because they have a hedge, but because like it's just kind of a blanket term, right? After like the 80s and really into the 90s, the term hedge fund is just kind of like a blanket statement for not being private equity. But now you're realizing that there really wasn't much of a hedge, because as the price of Bitcoin and pretty much everything USD wise goes way down, the hedge is no longer there, and the pain is starting to press a lot of these funds, which is what the market does. I mean, it does it to retail investors. It also does it to hedge funds that that maybe were way too overexposed in crypto and they can't remain solvent for very long. So they're sitting there being like, please, I hope this price goes up a little bit so that, things can turn around, their investors can, get off their back or whatever it may be. But this is going to play into a lot of what happens with the SEC regulations, with the OTC market, with how the whole ecosystem plays out. It's also going to show people that probably shouldn't be owning or running hedge funds, maybe squeezed out, acquired, whatever you want to call it, because of the timing, because of the regulations, of everything that happens through that. So this is, in my opinion, this is an interesting, trend, because if you don't have a certain amount of solvency, you often get smoked. And I think that that's something that you might look at a hedge fund and be like, oh, it's hedge funds, rich dudes over there. I can promise you, a lot of these hedge funds are guys, men and women, just like you and me, that hit it big on a couple big bets and thought, hey, I should just start a fund because I got people willing to give me $20 million. Why not? And like, this is their first rodeo. So it's kind of a blend of big money, the big money label, but with people with retail investing experience, which is always a fun little experiment to watch happen. So really, really cool stuff happening right now. I think overall what this all means is that the SEC is coming out. They're going to clamp down. It's not going to be the end of the world by any means, but they will shut down a lot of stuff that's garbage. So you need to look at your portfolio, make sure you don't have anything that's, blatantly like, what is this? That's a first step. The second step, I would say anything on Bittrex is probably a better idea than things that are just on Binance. Third, I think that higher market cap coins are always going to be a better bet. So I think that's, from an SEC standpoint, that's good. From an OTC standpoint, I wouldn't get too excited about that for price yet. I think it's a great news headline. I'm sure that played a part in what is going on here. I'm sure that played a part in this price movement right here on top of, being critical support level. But it's not a huge thing. Like OTC markets always have, and it's kind of a chicken and egg situation. And then there's still a lot of shakeout to be happening. The bigger deal is watching these. What is going on with these ads, man? The bigger deal is watching a lot of these deals going down and happening and things like that as it relates to crypto. Because I'm telling you guys, as much as everyone hates to say it, the price is going to go up when more retail people like you and me go to Coinbase and buy Bitcoin. Big money is not what is going to drive the price way up. A lot of people are like, oh, dude, you used to talk about big money coming in all the time. What happened? A lot of those people backed out. Dude, a lot of those people are these hedge funds that went bankrupt. They were stoked on it too in January. And now they're like, well, we don't have the money, or we're not interested, or we're waiting for it to go lower. Like, they backed out. And if they do, they're going to go buy at OTC. That is why you get friends, you get family, you get your neighbors, you get people you educate them on Bitcoin, you get them excited about crypto, you get them to buy $500 worth, because that is how the ecosystem grows. That's how the price goes. And then that's how the money comes in. And more importantly, that's how the big money will have to buy on the exchanges and drive the price up. Because if demand exceeds the ability for OTC markets to survive, they will be forced on the exchanges. That's how you get another big bubble. And like, some people feel uncomfortable doing that. That's the truth. That's how markets work. Take it or leave it. But it is retail money that will drive the price way more than anything else will. Lastly, I'll link this up. I just thought it was really good. I don't like to get into the politics of cryptocurrency. I think it's a waste of time. But I think Vitalik, I'm very happy about. I should like this, by the way. That Vitalik was at a conference with a lot of the guys from Bitcoin, like Samson from Blockstream. Then there's Roger and Craig, right, from Bitcoin Cash. And it's kind of this what do you call it? The convergence of all the minds, and more importantly, all the egos, all the ideologies of what the vision of these platforms should be. And it's a monster tweet storm, 61 tweets. It's worth reading. And I guess the TLDR is that Vitalik goes and he says, look, some of this I agree with, some of this I don't agree with. Craig Wright is an idiot. Like, he literally says that, which is kind of funny. But what I think is my big takeaway from this is that at the end of all of this, it doesn't matter when it comes to money. It doesn't matter what the vision of the original developers was, in my opinion. Right? It doesn't matter what Satoshi believed Bitcoin should be, or what Vitalik believes Ethereum should be, or what Roger believes Bitcoin Cash should be. And I respect that. I think it's important. But what I think is really the bigger issue here is what problems are we trying to solve here? And those two ideas, I think that's what Vitalik is really trying to get at. He's like, what problems are we solving using these platforms? And it's not about what the best marketing pitch is or what the best idea is. It's what's the best solution that's realistic. And I think that Vitalik would be the first to say, like, Ethereum might not be that for certain things. It might be that for other things. I mean, he's coming out and being like, wait, maybe we have to have a hard cap on this. Maybe we need to fork it some way. But I think that it's a very healthy, not debate, but just pushback against people that say this is what a coin is supposed to do. This is what money is supposed to do. This is what the vision of Satoshi was. This is what it's all about. Like, things have changed. And more importantly, Jim from Oklahoma, who's logging onto Coinbase for the first time, that's important. But for it to really kick in, we need to solve real problems. People need to use this stuff. They can't just buy it and hold it. You got to actually use it for the network and the transactions and for the thing to actually be worth something. And you're only going to use it if it solves a real problem. So I think that this by Vitalik is a way of him showing that, or at least trying to push back publicly. And obviously his ego gets in the way of this to a certain extent. He gets pretty fired up and whatever. And I'm not necessarily taking his side on this, but what I do think is that these kind of discussions where it's about the solutions. What are we solving? That's one of the reasons why I like Jed McCaleb so much from Stellar. It's because that's all he talks about. It's what are we solving? What problems are we solving? That's boom, boom, that's it. And the less ego, the less politics, the less this is the vision, this is what it's all about, the better, in my opinion, because that's the only way this survives. That's the only way that this chart goes up and to the right, is you guys solve real problems that real people have, you and me. And if we don't solve those problems, if we just come up with really cool ideas, chart dips, we go through another 2 years of development until we do find something that solves real problems that helps people like you and me. So, but you should go check it out. Read it. It's long, it's dense, and it's worth it. So go do it. So I'll leave it with that. Not a whole lot else. I think, good times. We're still in an interesting area with this price, but I think we do have a little bit of runway up to this 20 EMA, and then we go from there. All right, guys. Have a great Tuesday. I will catch you later. All right, peace out.